Thank you for this very kind introduction. First, I would like to tell you that I know that you were probably expecting to have Mrs. von der Leyen to be ready to speak to you today, but unfortunately, she has been asked to be in Berlin for a very important meeting about Libya. And I was supposed to come with her, but now I'm here on my own. But I will speak to you about what you said about our digital agenda. First, I would like to tell you that I'm extremely happy to be in Munich again. That's one of my second city. I spent a lot of time here over the past 10 years. I have many, many friends. Maybe I have something special with Berlin because my daughter, who's married a Berliner, lives in Berlin, and my two grandchildren are in Berlin, but still I love Munich. So thank you, and it's good to be back here together with you. So it's true that today we'll speak to you about the European digital agenda, and you are extremely right. You must see this commission that we call between us the von der Leyen Commission under two directions. First, the digital transition, and then, of course, the Green Deal, or vice versa. Extremely important two objectives, ambitions that will probably have a very, very strong influence for us in Europe and for our children over the coming years and decades. And within this commission and objective, I will speak to you about my portfolio, which is pretty large because, as you mentioned, I'm in charge of internal market. But also, when we speak about internal market, for the first time also digital, and for the first time also for defense and space. And if you look at what do we have in common within of this huge portfolio, including industry, including services, including tourism, including media, by the way. But what we have in common is definitely data. Data will change everything transversely, and this is what I would like to speak to you about today. When we speak about data, it's clear that I used to say, hopefully, if we work well all together, regarding the way Europe will handle its own data, it will be a before and an after von der Leyen Commission. Because yes, our objective, and of course we are an open continent, and I will come back on this, but our objective is that I have a friend that I see here coming from Siemens. Hello, Joe. If we look at what we have today in terms of data, it's true that my ambition is that European data will be used for our European company in priority, for us to create value in Europe. And it's true also that if we look in the past, some say that we missed a little bit this first data wave. My answer is, first, that no, Europe is no lagging behind its data battle. Yes, its first battle was mainly made on personal data. And it's true that today, if we look at the planet as a virtual data lake, the number of data that we have available on our planet today is roughly 35 to 40 zettabytes of data. In other words, 35 to 40,000 billions of data. This is today what is available when we speak about data. The good news is that now we are doubling this amount of data every 18 months. In other words, that's a little bit like a Moore's law in terms of data creation. Every 18 months, we are doubling the number of data created since the beginning of humanity till now. So it means that at the end of our mandate, together with Ursula von der Leyen and my colleagues, the planet will move from 35 zettabytes today to 175 zettabytes at the end of 2024, beginning of 2025. It means, of course, that in Europe, since we generate roughly 20 to 25% of the data produced in the world, it means that between now and the end of our mandate, the data that we'll create in Europe will be 40 zettabytes of data. In other words, the exact number of what we have in humanity today. So that's the good news. We may have missed a little bit the first wave. Let's be clear. My job is that we will not miss this second wave. And by the way, where this data will come from? This data will come from mainly, Jim Schnabel, from industrial data. And I don't, in my position, Jim, I don't speak about any company. I don't give any name of any company, and I try also don't speak to any country, except Europe. But still, it is true that if we look at today, where these data are located, the famous 35 zettabytes of data, mainly today, 80% of this data are located in data center or cloud, and already, early 2020, 20% on a pervasive way everywhere. Beginning of some in connected car, some in virtual factory, some in machines, some in smartphones, some in hospital, but 20%, which is still already a pretty good number, big number. But what will happen during our mandate? If there's something that we need to remember, this number 80-20 will move to 20-80. In other words, in 2025, from the famous 175 zettabytes of data, 20% of those data will be located in cloud and data centers, and 80% everywhere. Everywhere. And that's a huge change of paradigm. And of course, as you know, we will create value more and more locally where data are produced, adding artificial intelligence and computing power more and more locally where data are produced. Of course, we will continue to swallow some metadata to continue to run machine learning and so on. But this change of paradigm is happening now. It's now. With edge computing, with everything that we will be the consequences of this, we change drastically our way to handle our data, to see what we can do with our data, and of course, in terms of cybersecurity, believe me, it is changing here again everything. And again, it's our job at the Commission to prepare, together with the member state, of course, this change of paradigm, which is lagging huge opportunities in front of us, as long as we have a clear vision of what we want to do, how we want to behave with our data. And I remember, I'm reading, I remember Jim. We were together 6 years ago. We were advocating. I think you were CEO of another German company. I don't give names. I was CEO of another company. I don't give names either. Huh? No conflict of interest. By the way, I don't have any more shares. Huh? I'm totally free. But still, with Jim Schnabel, we were advocating and starting to say, hey, in terms of industrial data, European data must be stored and processed locally in Europe under European rules. And of course, it's our job to give rules. We don't want, again, to give too more rules, but we have to be clear. What are rules? What are our values? So that, and by the way, what kind of laws applied on the data processed in Europe. And believe me, in my former life, all my customers were coming to see me and say, Thierry, okay, you run our data, but we want only European laws to apply on our data, not some extra territorial laws applying on our data, even without us knowing what is happening with our data. So that's, of course, something that we are working on, and our mission, definitely, in this post-cloud era, 2080, is to define simple rules so that everybody will be comfortable with the way we are using our data, and of course, mainly for our European enterprise, SMEs, startups. Of course, everybody is welcome to come in Europe, but again, you can count on me. I will be extremely clear on the rules that we will apply on companies, entities processing our data in Europe. And that's, of course, an extremely important subject, especially when we speak about AI. And we will have also an AI vision ambition strategy. It's normal. We will have to express also in the algorithm that we will use in Europe our values. But you are specialists in this room, and you know that what is AI about? AI is first data, valuable data. AI is algorithm. AI is computing power. And it's my job to make sure that we create a favorable landscape for these three dimensions. That's my job. Here again, I don't put any invisible barrier. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that in continental Europe, we are driving car on the right side. That's it. That's my job. And everybody is welcome as long as you fulfill our requirements. I will be clear, I will be strong. Because at the end of the day, we are talking of the future of Europe here. We need partners, we need everybody. And by the way, we have the talents. We are here in Munich. I'm amazed of the talents we have in Munich and in Bavaria. But we have talents everywhere. Of course, we will continue to enhance it. It's so true that when I'm going in the world, especially in my previous life, I find Europeans everywhere, especially in this environment, everywhere. So we'll make sure that our young talents will be able to find jobs here. I will love to stay in Bavaria. It's so nice. And elsewhere, of course, in Europe. Infrastructure. For this to happen, of course, we will need the right infrastructure. First, computing power. And it's extremely important that we monitor our computing power more and more in Europe. We work on this. We have USPC. We will continue to monitor this. We will launch new initiative. I will speak in a few minutes about one of my favorite subjects, quantum. But still, before to speak about quantum, we need to continue to enhance this. And believe me, that's a very important program that we will follow carefully at the Commission level. But in terms of infrastructure, of course, I need to speak a little bit on the 5G deployment. Because obviously, 5G deployment, and especially standalone 5G, in 2 or 3 years, will be a critical architecture allowing, of course, to run and deploy this vision that I gave you, 80-20, 2080. And of course, having the ability locally, everywhere, to deploy antenna will become smart antennas with AI and computing power locally embedded in each antenna so that we'll be able to create a local interaction which we change the paradigm that we described. Of course, 5G is something which is pretty fashionable these days. But as a former chairman and CEO of a big telco operator, I know this subject pretty well. And I just want to tell you why it is normal that the member state decided to take a specific look at 5G. Because 5G is not the deployment of a new enhanced telecommunication network. It is something new. It is a new architecture, totally new. You had GSM, you had 2G, you had 3G, you had 4G. But 5G is not a 4G plus. 5G, standalone 5G, is something totally new, which will allow, again, to develop many, many new applications, to run many critical applications for all our fellow citizens in Europe. We'll be in smart cities, we'll be in connected car, we'll be in hospital, we'll be in retail store, we'll be everywhere. And of course, a lot of these applications are the responsibility of the states to make sure that everything is well developed the way we want and with our own values. Needless to say that when you have such a massive deployment with so many smart antennas, each point where you create a data is a potential entry point in terms of cybersecurity, which is changing drastically our way to monitor cybersecurity at the level of an operator, at the level of a state, at the level of the union, because of course everything is interconnected. This is why we needed to have a collective approach on this issue. Here again, I will not speak about anybody. It's not my job. I'm just speaking about Europe. First, I would like to tell you that I strongly believe that Europe has everything in hands to lead the rest in 5G. And I'm a little bit annoyed to hear that we are late, we are nowhere in Europe, and so on. It is just not true. It is just not true. I'm an engineer and scientist myself, and I can tell you that today Europe owns, control more than 50% of the patents and essential patents of all the 5Gs. More than 50%. China owns 30%, and the US 14%. So that's the way it is. That's a fact. So please, just realize that here again, we are leading the rest in terms of innovation, and again, decisive patents. And I'm talking of big numbers here. So we have, again, big companies in Europe able to deploy first the non-standalone 5G network, which is what we will see in the next few months, which will give more bandwidth for end-to-end customers, and within 1-2 years, the standalone 5G, where the smart antennas and everything. And this is today available. But what is making 5G, again, different than other deployment is that today, to run full standalone 5G network, the software needed for this are probably one of the more complex and largest software in the planet today. Huge, huge software. Kilometers and kilometers and kilometers of code lines. And of course, first, when you have nothing to compare with the software needed to run a 4G or 3G network, nothing to compare. And of course, when you have such a huge software, first you have also, of course, bugs. And remember that, and I don't say this is done intentionally, but you have bugs. When you have a bug, it's an entry door for people entities, whoever, who may have bad ideas or behavior spirit. But in addition to this, you need to download new releases every 2 weeks, because again, of the size of the software. And then third, we have more than 100 telco operators in Europe. And of course, some will be able to monitor, but few of them, to monitor this huge software and to maintain. But most of them will not have the skills and the ability, and will probably subcontract the whole monitoring of the system to a third-party entity, either a third supplier or a third party. And of course, we want to make sure that this is done under our rules. And Jim, like we said for data, I will favor this to be done in Europe, under European laws. And here again, I'm welcoming everybody. We are welcoming everybody. We just want to be clear, and for this specific deployment, we will have specific rules. It's not me who was saying this. It was first the member states in March 2019 who have decided to collectively discuss together how to handle this new deployment. Fantastic opportunity for Europe, fantastic. Then the Parliament, 2 weeks later, and then both of them and the state member asked the Commission to monitor a discussion between the member state to define what we called between us a toolbox of what should be the checklist, but it will be a demanding checklist regarding the criticality of the deployment of these networks. So a checklist that each country and telco operator should fulfill to make sure that it is compliant with our interests and values. And as you know, a lot of work has been done under the Juncker Commission and will be, and has continued to be done with the new Commission of Ursula von der Leyen. And we will present at the end of this month the result of this toolbox, which will be extremely important for everybody who would like to deploy a 5G network and to make sure that we are all aligned. I repeat, everybody is welcome in Europe, but more and more, we will issue clear rules and everybody will have to fulfill all these rules. I say all. So, wait another 2 weeks and you will have this toolbox, but I'm impressed, by the way, by the work which has been done with the member state. It's the first time, by the way, in our history that we are aligned on a specific subject like this in telecommunication. And again, it's probably because 5G is more than a telecommunication, a pure telecommunication network. So, critical technologies. Critical technologies is what will be next. With such a huge amount of data, we will need more and more computing power. More and more computing power. And here again, I'm fighting so that we'll be able to have our own resources in Europe, which will fulfill, by the way, our needed in terms of power, but also energy. Because as you know, data are consuming a lot of energy. More than 5% of the CO2 emissions worldwide are produced by data centers and so on, so we have to make sure that everything will be reduced in order to fulfill our requirements of being a zero CO2 continent by 2050. Computing power, and this is where, of course, we start to think and to speak a lot. You got already a session here, I think, about quantum and quantum computing. First, quantum. Quantum technologies will be the big story for the next generation. If I was young, I think I will start a startup in quantum for another life. It's absolutely fascinating. We have so many capacities in Europe, it's amazing. By the way, I just remind you that quantum was invented by a bunch of young physicists 1 century ago, German, Italian, French, Danish, we all know them. And now it's time to see the first deployment. It's fascinating. If we are able to speak today the way we speak, it is because laser, it is because atomic clock, it is because all these things which are the first application of quantum technologies. But of course, quantum technologies will probably, I say probably, allow us to have the next generation in terms of computer. I don't say here that we will see within the next 5, 10, 15 years a pure quantum computer. But what I'm saying is with the research that we have in Europe and elsewhere on the planet, I am absolutely certain that within the next 5 years, we'll start to see some quantum accelerator, allowing, by using some device, being able to entangle 20 qubits, and we can do this already, reducing the noise, allowing to accelerate drastically some specific algorithm, and to embed it like you have a CPU on a supercomputer, a GPU, you will have this quantum accelerator. I know many companies working on this. Some of them are European. And of course, the Commission decided with the Quantum Manifesto to invest 1 billion euros in research here. So I'm expecting to see the first quantum accelerator within the next 5 years to be able to accelerate some specific algorithm again, allowing to increase drastically computations or ability to find an information in huge data lakes. And here again, we will do that this will happen in Europe. I'm amazed. I know most of the research centers working on quantum in the world. You will be amazed to see so many Europeans. How many Europeans are in this center? In Europe, of course, but in the US, in Asia, including in Australia. So anyway, my message here is that we are not late. We understand what it has at stake. We have the team, we have the skills, we have the will, we have the ambition, and I think we understand also what we're talking about. So the good news is that we will do everything so that Europe will not miss the new data wave, the industrial and B2B data wave. We'll do everything it takes. We'll do everything to be extremely clear in our requirements, so everybody, like always, will be welcome to come to work with us, but not vice versa. Thank you all.